Hello, welcome to Casual Veteran Gamer. In the video today I'm going to be showing you the Wizard Blaster build. It's not exactly an unknown build, but I'm also going to go and have a look at just how far we can take it with the new magic items we got given in patch 5. Let's start with the class, going to be wizards. For the cantrips, honestly really up to you. I'm going to go with friends because it's awesome. I'm going to go with kind of a themed wizard here using fire, so I'm just going to give them firebolt. And then, what about Blade Ward? As for the spells that you know, again, for level 1 it's kind of up to you. I would recommend Mage Armor, Magic Missile, Frost Life isn't bad, Thunderwave, I like Thunderwave. Burning Hands, maybe, it's not always necessarily great, but maybe Burning Hands, Fog Cloud. The level 1 spells really don't matter too much, that's just for general gameplay. For the race, you want any race that gives you a +1 in intelligence. So it could be Elf, Asmodeus Tiefling, Mephistopheles Tiefling, Human, Githyanki, either half variant because you get to choose the ability bonus, so intelligence. And that's it. I'm going to choose Tiefling, Asmodeus Tiefling, because I like to have Thaumaturgy. Obviously we've got friends, but sometimes friends can't be applied and Thaumaturgy can be. Then we come to abilities. Fairly straightforward. Want to have a highest amount of intelligence that you can, so 16. I'd recommend 14 in Dexterity Constitution. The other 3 up to you. You can always put 1 at 8 and put 1 at 12. I just go for 10, 10, 10, so I don't have any negative modifiers. At level 2, you get the choice of the subclass, Evocation or Abjuration School. Neither of these is necessarily better for the build than the other. Whichever one you prefer. Abjuration is good if you want more hit points, a bit more tanky. Evocation if you find yourself using AoEs around your allies. I'm going to go with Evocation. And then pick a couple more spells. Yeah, again, it doesn't really matter. At level 3, as an Asmodeus Tiefling, we get Hellish Rebuke, which goes around the theme of fire. Also, as a Tiefling, I didn't mention it earlier, we get fire resistance also. These are spells. The most important one is Scorching Ray. That's the spell that's going to be dishing out the most damage with this build. And then, whatever your preferred level 2 spell is, I like Shatter. Level 4, you get another choice of cantrip. Whichever one you want. None of these is particularly important for the build. I don't know, Dancing Lights. Then you get to pick 2 more spells. It could be first level, could be second level. Maybe you want to pick Flaming Sphere and Misty Step. Then we come to choose our feat. Now for our feat, we're not going to do the ability score improvement. We are going to do Magic Initiate Warlock. For the cantrips, I wouldn't go for any cantrips that rely on a charisma saving throw, such as Eldritch Blast. Yes, force damage is resisted less, but for the wizard, we've got intelligence as our main stat. Don't expect to hit with it as much. So maybe I'll take Minor Illusion and Blade Ward. Now for the spells, this is what we want here. Hex. This is what's going to be amplifying our damage. So now we've got the most basic version of the build, the bread and butter. We've got Scorching Ray, we've got Hex, so we can start using it. So let's just show this off. I'm going to use Hex, I'll talk about Hex in a second. So just targeting the nearest one. Probably shouldn't have actually targeted him, probably should have gone for Lump, but never mind. And also we're on our way to getting our first item to help us. So that was very useful, that was fairly lucky. So just dealt 38 damage there. Obviously use the level 2 spell slot and Hex. But what happens is the Scorching Rays have an attack roll each, so each of them gets Hex damage on top of it. So with the first attack I got a critical hit, which doubles the damage dice for both Scorching Ray and Hex. Notice there Hex did 2d6 damage. The only major downside to this is that it uses a level 2 spell slot to do this. Outside of using Scorching Ray, Hex will still work on any spells that have attack rolls. So I'll show you that in a second. So just before I show you this working with, let's say, Firebolt, I do just want to talk quickly about Hex. It is currently bugged with the Magic Initiate Warlock. So we all know once a target with Hex has died, you get this reapply Hex. Now Magic Initiate Warlock says you can only cast Hex once per long rest, but the way Hex currently works, even says there recharge once per long rest. You'll notice that of these 6 choices, the strength one says requires long rest before use, so the strength one can't be used. But I can actually Hex a different stat. Now I wouldn't advise you do this while you've got the reapply there, but I just kind of want to just show that this works. And then hopefully if Firebolt hits, yeah, there we are, we get an extra 1d6 damage. So I mean, Hex at these levels is just a strong choice, and you could almost put Hex on any character. What I'm going to do is kill these ogres and then start showing you some magic items you can equip to your blaster. Of all the magic items that I'm going to show you, this first one, this warped Headband of Intellect, is the only one that you could have got before patch 5. All of the rest of the items are included, or came included, with the addition of patch 5. What does the warped Headband of Intellect do? It's fairly well known at this point. Increases the wearer's intelligence to 18. So this increases your chance to hit with Scorching Ray, allows you to know or prepare one more spell, and increases your save DC for other spells. It's a solid choice, especially since we use level 4 not to use an ability score increase, but for a feat instead. In the next few clips, I'm going to show you extra magic items you can go and get. So I came into the Shattered Sanctum, and actually I didn't fight everyone, and I broke my way into Draw Ragslin's treasure chamber. And in this chest here, 2 items. The only one that I want to be looking at as a possible choice is a Circlet of Fire. Circlet of Fire, Fire Return. When you deal damage with a non-cantrip spell, gain a bonus action. That sounds great, but wizards don't have a whole lot of bonus actions. So between the Warped Headband of Intellect and the Circlet of Fire, I will personally normally choose the Warped Headband of Intellect. But having extra bonus actions isn't a bad thing. You can hide, you can jump, you can dip, you can shove. But wizards don't necessarily use those as much as other classes. Right, on to the next item. We're still inside the Shattered Sanctum, inside the Defiled Temple, which is the locked area behind True Soul Guts, kind of her little room. Inside this gilded chest is Ilmater's Aid. Strengthening Suffering. Non-cantrip spells deal an additional 1d4 force damage when the wearer drops to half their hit points or lower. Ideally, you won't be lower than half your hit points if you're trying to survive, but if you do find yourself lower than half hit points, you will also find yourself doing extra damage with Scorching Ray. Not only Scorching Ray, but any other leveled spell. Okay, and then onwards to the next item. The next item requires you to do 2 things. It's down in the Underdark. These last 2 items, in fact, are in the Underdark, so you won't be able to use them for as much of the game unless you rush into the Underdark to do these. So this item I'm about to show you, you have to go and clear the Duergar next to the beach in the Underdark, and then come back to the Myconid colony and get rid of, not Spore, yeah, get rid of Spore, get rid of pretty much all the Myconids that are there. You help Glut take over the circle. If you do that, Sovereign Glut rewarded us and named us King Bearer of its circle. We get to choose between Featherlight Boots or the Ring of Fire. We're going to go the Ring of Fire. We've got a whole theme of fire going on with this build. When dealing fire damage, the wearer deals an additional 1 fire damage. It's not a whole amount of extra damage, but it all adds up. So on a blaster here, Ring of Fire. That leaves us with 1 more item to go and get. The last item comes from a choice of quest rewards for saving Balin Bone Cloak here. Throw the item anywhere near him, preferably don't hit him. Picks it up, and we immediately, once he has a little speech, get to choose between 2 different things. Between Gloves of Fire Resistance, which when the wearer has 50% hit points or less, they have fire resistance. Not that great. Or we can get the Gloves of Flint and Steel. Now the description here is wrong. Hot little hands. When dealing fire damage, target has to make DC 8 con saving throw or be Cohen dealt fire damage. The target must make a Constitution save or be set alight. What that's trying to say is that if you hit the enemy with fire damage, they have to make a Constitution saving throw. And if they fail it, they get set alight, which is basically an extra 1d4 damage. So these 4 items, well actually no, these 3 items, Ilmater's Aid, Ring of Fire, and Gloves of Flint and Steel add damage to your attacks. The Warped Headband of Intellect increases your chance to hit. So here we have a Hook Horror at full health. My wizard has just under half health, just under 50% health. So I'm going to reapply Hex. Then I'm going to cast Scorching Ray. That's only a 65% chance to hit, which is why I want the Warped Headband of Intellect, because without it, it'd only be 60% chance to hit. So we've got 2 hits and a miss, and so we're getting 2 lots of 2d6, an extra 1 fire damage here because of the ring. And they made a saving throw. That saving throw is the Constitution saving throw from the gloves. Extra 1d. The tooltip here doesn't actually tell us where this comes from. This is from the necklace. It does 1d4 force damage. A bit unlucky to get a 1. This necrotic damage is from Hex, which is another 1 from 1d6. And then another 1 fire damage because I hit the second time. They made a Constitution saving throw, but they passed. And then an extra 1d4 and an extra 1d6. So in grand total, just the average Scorching Ray with Hex, 10, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 24. That's a bit on the low side. We did miss with one of them, and we rolled a 1 several times for damage, and quite low on damage down here. But it's a decent amount of damage. Do you know what? I'm going to try it one more time, just to see how it holds up. Scorching Ray does have a ranged attack roll, so it does mean you can get advantage from things like being up high, being hidden, having Invoke Duplicity up, something like that. On the other hand, it can also get disadvantage if the enemy's in dark or you're down low. So do whatever you can to give yourself advantage. I haven't been able to do it here. So let's give it a go. That looked a little bit better. All 3 hit this time. It's slightly lucky, considering this started off at 4 hit points. That did 54 damage this time with all 3 hitting. This is because of better damage rolls, and I got 3 hits instead of 2. So this has the potential for some rather high burst damage, and I'm going to show you even higher burst damage next. There are a few ways to guarantee critical hits. One of them is having a sleeping enemy, one is having hold person, and another is if you've got exposing bite from the wolf form, wild shape form from a druid. So I'm going to cast Hex on this Hook Horror first, which doesn't wake it up. Then use Scorching Ray. This is going to be overkill. This is way over the top. I wouldn't actually normally do this, but it's just somewhere I found that I could show you the maximum potential for this spell, or this setup. Everything here is a critical hit. Instead of having 2d6 per Scorching Ray, it's 4d6. The force damage goes up to 2d4. It doesn't show it here, but it will be 2d4. The Hex damage is 2d6. The fire damage, the 1 extra fire damage is just 1 extra damage still. So adding this up, 74 damage. That's alright. That would easily kill the Hook Horror in one go. Now the situations where you will be able to use one of those abilities are quite rare, because for sleep, it only works on enemies with the low hit points anyway, so you wouldn't normally use this spell in this situation. And I'm going to show you this again with Hold Person. So Shadowheart and Lae'zel had a falling out. Shadowheart decided to cast Hold Person on Lae'zel. And for some reason, Tav here has had enough of Lae'zel's attitude and behaviour. Hex first. Scorching Ray, 100% chance to hit because Lae'zel is paralysed. And there's no way we would expect her to survive that. And again, we've got rather high damage here. 85 damage in total that time. That's going to wipe out most, but not all, most enemies in the game, if you can get them into the situation where you get guaranteed critical hits. Like I said, Exposing Bite will also work if you've got a druid in your team as well. You can pretty much build Gale to do this. It doesn't have to be Tav, actually. One last thing to talk about is Hellish Rebuke, one of the reasons we picked Asmodeus Tiefling in the first place. First of all, it doesn't take an action or bonus action, which is nice. And then, if you're feeling lucky, you can go in and walk away, take a hit, and then do some extra damage. Now, he passes saving throw, so it would have been 14, but goes down to 7. We're getting extra damage done. If I'd been hit beneath half my hit points, would have done extra 1d4 force damage. One last thing to note about Hellish Rebuke here. It says the spellcasting ability is Charisma. However, my DC for the saving throw was 14, which is definitely based on my intelligence, because spell difficulty class is 14 from my intelligence because I'm a wizard. If it had been based off Charisma, the spell difficulty class should be 10 from the base number of 8 plus my proficiency bonus plus my charisma modifier of 0, so 8 plus 2 plus 0 is 10. So actually for wizard, it's on our side. I don't know whether the bug is in the tooltip or within the actual mechanics of them using intelligence or not. So do let me know what you think about this build. I do recognise the fact that we're not going to be doing the kind of the highest amounts of damage very often. also recognise the fact that it does use a level 2 spell slot to do the most damage. However, I also feel it can be very satisfying seeing all these numbers pop up. Imagine this being this in tabletop, how many dice you'd be able to roll for just one attack. So yeah, leave your comments below. If you've made it this far, please do consider subscribing, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.